Divorced after 16 years of marriage and single at 39, I share my mistakes and experiences to help your marriage, improve your dating life, and prepare you for life after divorce. Well, everybody, I have a good friend of mine. Her name is Flor. And when did we meet exactly? I know it was on TikTok, but how long ago did we meet?
Shoot, it's been what, like 3 years ago, I think, or something? Before like COVID or during COVID, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was 2020. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. I know. And I was like, oh, look at this guy giving all this advice.
And you were doing your little ad libs or lip sync videos or something like that, right? With these 80s catchy songs or something.
Yeah.
You weren't telling stories. You're just kind of doing that, your thing, right?
I was just trying. I was just, just trying to have fun. Yeah, that's pretty much, and I really just needed a distraction. And I know that's so cliche because I know a lot of people, that's what they use TikTok for. But for me, I just needed an escape from what I had going on, What
was going on.
So that was the main reason. Yeah. And it was fun. Then I met cool people such as yourself. So, yeah, it worked out.
I like to think I'm cool. I'm all right. And that's what we're going to talk about, everybody. The reason I have Flor on the podcast is her story is very similar to mine in a sense, because she just recently got divorced about 3-4 months ago. Yeah. And she confided in me and we talked, and I kind of gave her advice throughout her whole episode of this whole divorce as it was going on. And, I've been there for her and she's been there for me in a sense when it comes to like sensitive things like that. And I wanted her on just to share her story again, because everybody knows who listens to me. My whole platform is about sharing life experiences, real life experiences, so others can learn from it and connect with it. And, I asked her and she said, okay, give me some time because it just happened. And I totally understand that. I respect that because my event happened 9 years ago. So time had gone by for me to talk about it with you. It's still fresh because it happened in January or December.
January was our final, and the judge didn't actually sign off on the decree until like March. So yeah, technically it was January, but yeah, it's still pretty recent.
Yeah. And so it's fresh. And honestly, I applaud you for being brave for talking about this, because I don't know if I could have that soon after the event. So we're going to hear your story and again, so others can learn from it and relate to it in a sense. So let's go back to the beginning. So where are you from exactly?
So originally from California, from Southern California, born and raised.
Southern California. Okay. And when your ex-husband, when did you first meet this guy? How did you meet? Man,
we met on plentyoffish.com.
Oh God. Okay.
I know. Right. That should have been the first flag already, as it is right there. But, back then it was popular. And, I think what happened really, and I remember, I think I told you this, is because I was already approaching 35. I was in my mid 30s. I was like, okay, if this isn't going to happen for me, then I guess I'll be okay with it. But I did want to get married. I did want to have kids, so I was like, you know what? All right. So let me try it. We met on there and, he was active duty at the time. Or he was taking a break or something, but then he decided to go active duty in the Army. And so then it just kind of, we started talking, and then it was just really fast after that. And I don't know if it's because we were both looking for the same thing. None of us had kids. We both, wanted the same thing. So it kind of made sense at the time for us to try to see if we can get something going together. And, it ended up happening. But it was really, really fast, though. Really fast. Yeah.
So you were 35 and he was similar
same age.
Okay, so same age, no kids. Both of y'all had never been married, so you were both looking to start that next step in life. And you met on Plenty of Fish, and I remember that app. I was on it for like a month. I'm like, no way. I wonder if
it's even open. I don't even know.
It probably still is. So you met on Plenty of Fish, and how was your first date?
Our first date, the first date was okay. We went out for drinks. We hung out, because at that time, he was already in Texas.
Okay, and you were in California, so did you fly out or something?
So, yeah. So when we first met, we were both in Southern California, and then he had gotten orders to go to Texas. So I was like, I've never been to Texas. All right, let me go check it out. So that's when it happened. So then we ended up hanging out, and At first it was okay. I mean, honestly, we were just kind of bar hopping, just kind of getting to know each other. We had dinner. And at that time, Rudy, I mean, honestly, we did fall for each other really quickly. It was really quick.
Mm.
And I don't know if it was because, when you're in the military and say you have to go somewhere and you get orders somewhere, you kind of, if you want your person to go with you, you have to get married. You have to, or else you kind of just stay behind. But at that time, we weren't really thinking about that. We just kind of, I don't know if it was just an instant connection, and we just kind of fell for each other pretty quickly in the beginning.
Okay, the first date that happened really fast, you said, what was it about him? You said you fell for each other really fast. So what was it about him specifically that you fell for?
He was funny, he was witty. He was a charmer. I mean, honestly, he really was. It makes me so sad now that I'm just like, what did I really see in him, But it was that he was charming. He was witty. I mean, he was nice. He knew what he wanted, he knew what he wanted. And I think that's a big turnoff for a lot of women, is a man who really knows what they want. He wasn't playing games. He had told me right away, hey, this is what I want. Okay, well, that's what I want too. He was open to meeting my family. He had goals, he had goals and dreams, he was educated, so I mean, all those things that I wanted in a partner at a time, and I think that's what happened. And because he saw all those things in me too, my family and all that. So I think that's what led to us just getting connected pretty quickly.
Yeah. And at the same time, as you mentioned, you both were at that age where you both wanted to make that next step. So I can understand how seeing that can kind of convince you, hey, this guy is a good guy, and this may be the one to go ahead and get started and move on. He's being very respectful. He's charming. He's got ambition. So yeah, I can totally understand that.
Yeah.
So that's going well. That's going on. So when did you both decide to let's take the next step? Like, when did engagement or marriage come into the picture? That conversation.
So at that time, he had gotten deployed to Afghanistan, and we still maintained contact throughout the time that he was there. He ended up being there for about 6 to 8 months, maybe close to 8 months. And we communicated every single day. And to be honest with you, Rudy, like that time that even though we weren't together, we still were able to communicate every single day. And it just kind of, our relationship got a little bit stronger, as weird as that was, because he was so far away. But then we ended up going on a vacation to Aruba. And that's where he proposed, in Aruba.
Okay.
In Aruba. Yeah. And we'd have known each other for maybe a year.
Okay. So a year you knew each other. Okay.
Still, it was about a year, but the majority of that time he was in Afghanistan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a year happens, he proposed, and when was the wedding date? Like, when did that happen?
So it was quick after that. So here's the weird thing about it, Rudy. And I remember thinking back, I'm like, okay, I should have seen the red flags. When he finally did come back, I kind of noticed he was a little off, and a lot of these, and a lot of the people, or a lot of the soldiers, when they come back from being FARD, some of the things that were going on at the time, at that time, I did kind of notice him. He was a little off. He would kind of get irritated at the smallest things, but I kind of just was like, oh, okay, maybe he's just tired. It's been, he's had it rough, whatever. Yeah. But after that, I remember telling my mom and my stepdad, I want something small. I don't want a big wedding. Well, because I'm my mom's only child, of course she went all out and had a big, but I hate to say it now, looking back now, I wasn't excited for the wedding because it happened so quickly. Okay. It was so quick. It was too quick. Now, and here's the thing. I was already pregnant with my oldest at the time.
Oh, how many? Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And a lot of people have asked, oh, was that why you got married? He proposed to me before we found out we were pregnant. But, when we started kind of going through the whole, the plans for the plans of the wedding and all that, I just wasn't into it. And I chalked it up as, oh, maybe it was my hormones. I'm leaving my family. I had lived in Southern California for my entire life, and here I was moving to Texas, And so I'm like, okay, maybe that's what it is. But I wasn't a happy bride.
Looking back, and I'm sorry, but looking back at that
Yeah.
point, because I can understand how, being married at one point in my life, how a lot of people can get swept away with the
Mm-hmm.
enthusiasm and excitement of planning a wedding that you kind of forget about the core, like, hey, am I ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
And some
Mm-hmm.
people, believe it or not, it happens all the time. People tell me that they knew while they were planning, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be, because I know I have some doubts, and maybe it's cold feet. People kind of make exceptions to what they're feeling. Like, yeah, maybe it's just me. I
Yeah.
don't know, but a lot of people have that feeling. So I guess for you, it was a combination of just the events. And when the wedding came up, you said your mom wanted to throw your wedding. So did you feel like you're kind of losing control of the situation?
Yes. Yeah, I was. I was. I didn't want a bridal shower. I remember I was like, I don't want it. Like, I'm fine. Like, I just didn't want any of it. My mom was like, no, no, we have to, this and that. I'm like, okay. So I honestly just went through the motions of everything. I remember even trying on wedding dresses. I was just like, okay, this will do. That's fine. I wasn't
Mm.
like, when you see like these typical like brides who are super excited, I just wasn't like that. And again, really honestly, I thought maybe it's just my hormones. I'm pregnant. At that point, I was about maybe 2 months along. I mean, I was barely showing, but I think I had a combination of both. In a way, I mean, I was looking forward to getting married, but then as it got closer, I don't know. I started to get scared because I knew that the next step was I was going to have to quit my job. I was going to move. I was going to be away from my family. And at that time, I thought, I'm good. I can handle it. This is going to be exciting. No,
Wow.
because once we got married, a week later, I moved. I quit my job. Everything that I knew, I left behind in California. And now I'm
Mm.
living in Texas. And that resentment that I had towards him for me leaving, honestly, that's one of the reasons why I think our marriage kind of failed a little bit too. And I can admit that. I
Mhm.
never really fully got rid. Just couldn't get over it. I don't know. It was weird.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And, we've talked about this plenty of times
Yeah.
privately, and I never thought about it like that, because
Hmm.
I knew of the story, the highlights of it, but when you kind of paint the picture like you just did, where everything you knew, California is wonderful weather
Hmm.
compared to Texas. I wouldn't move to
Oh, I hate
Texas.
the heat here.
The heat sucks. I've been to California once, and it was like midsummer. I'm like, it's 70 degrees and it's July.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
beautiful. But leaving your hometown, leaving California,
Yeah.
quitting your job, leaving your family, and moving to Texas, that's a lot of sacrifice for a person
Very.
to
And I was
to
pregnant too.
and you were
Yeah.
pregnant too.
And I
So
was pregnant. Yeah. So
and
it's,
again, having my fiance, we have a child now, that
yeah.
identity that, you're kind of also feeling like you're losing a bit of yourself as well, because now you're transitioning to
Right.
become a mother. And that's a huge transition for women. Again, I've seen it firsthand
It
twice in my
is.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It
that's a
is.
lot you're
Yeah.
going through.
Right. And I didn't have any family, I was basically by myself, and here's another thing too, Rudy, is we were only in Texas for about 8 months. And then I had the baby, obviously, around that time. Then we got orders to Germany. So
Oh,
now I'm
okay.
having to move to a different country further away from my family. And we were there for about 3 years. And that was a whole other thing. But yeah, so it was rough. And like, again, I thought to myself, I can do this. I'm good. I'm ready for a new adventure. This is going to be great. And I just never fully was able to really kind of recover from being away from everything that I known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's hard to ask anybody, especially to move
Hmm.
out of state and give up your family and everything you've known, to move to one state and then another country. Like you said, that's a lot. And did you ever share that feeling with your ex-husband?
I did. I mean, and at the time he did the best that he could to make things accommodating for me, because I ultimately I'm the one that made the choice, right? It's not like he was
Yeah.
pulling my leg. And and I remember at one point he said, "You're the one who made the decision to do this." I said, "Yes," because I believed in us at the time.
Yeah.
But it was he tried, but then I noticed while we were in Germany, things were kind of rough for the both of us, especially for him in the position that he was at over there in his military career. So I think that's when things started to get a little bit it just kind of a little bit too wonky for the both of us around that time. And then, after 3 years, we ended up coming back to Texas because that's where we knew, because he was still active duty. He still had a few years to go. But then I remember, around that time we have had the conversation, when you retire, I really want to go back home.
Right.
And at one point, because he's also from there too, and he was like, well, it's getting too expensive. Da, 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 da. I said, I understand that. I go, but that's where our family is. We have 2 kids now, because I have my second in Germany, and at one point when we were here in Texas, when we came back, I thought to myself, okay, well, I can make it work here. We can get more bang for our buck over here. We can get a bigger house, this and that. But while we were looking, just a couple months later, I was just like, you know what? No, I can't be away from my family, And honestly, Rudy, I mean, amongst some other things, but me wanting to go back home was one of the issues why we got divorced too.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
And that's, I mean, as a husband, as a partner, if I'm just talking for myself right now, that if I'm with somebody and you're telling me, and I see that family is important to you, and leaving was very hard, and your ultimate dream or want was to go back. I, as a husband and a fiance and a boyfriend partner, I would say, okay, that's where the mother of my children wants to go. Her family's there. It makes sense. Oh, I want my kids to grow up around family. Did he have family in Texas, or is it just you guys?
No, it was just us. We did have close friends. And at one point, his mom did actually move out here to be close with us. And it was more bearable, because she did help, she did help us a lot with the kids.
That's good.
But she was only out here for 2 years, and she couldn't make it. She just missed home. So she ended up moving back. And I remember when she had told us she was thinking about moving back, I remember I had said, well, maybe we should think about moving back then. And it would just cause like a big, all explosive, like just conversation. We couldn't even talk about it without both of us yelling, arguing about it. So I just stopped bringing it up, because it would just cause too much chaos. It was just too argumentative,
And that kind of, like I said, kind of reiterated my point. If that's what my mother or my children wanted, and that's where all of our family was, I would do it. I would sacrifice whatever the hell I wanted and just move back there so my kids can grow up with family and you can be happy. There's less stress. Right. And for me, that seems like the logical mindset. But in this particular case, it sounds like he just chose not to or didn't want to. And anytime you addressed this need, it became a fight.
It became a fight. It was a constant fight. Every time I would bring it up, it was a fight. Every time I would see like my family having birthday parties and my kids were missing out on that, because I grew up close to my family. That was heartbreaking, Rudy, for me. It still is, because I am still living in Texas, But yeah, it was just a constant fight. And then at one point I was like, all right, well, let me see if I can make it work here. But and then, more problems starting to come up, and that's when I was just like, oh man, this isn't going to work. Yeah. And then that resentment, I'm telling you, that resentment would really kill any relationship, because I still, to this day, that's why I feel like I need help, because it's that anger and that resentment. It's so hard to get past that, to even want to continue to want to make things work. It's hard.
Especially when your partner isn't showing any empathy. It sounds like he wasn't sympathizing with your situation. It was just like a hard no. Yeah. And and again, I wasn't there, but you're more or less one of those arguments. You're telling him, I want to see my family. And I get the sense that you weren't maybe heard. And
I wasn't heard. Yeah. And then, you tap in the loneliness of being in a marriage where you feel extremely lonely.
Yeah.
And again, this isn't anything for me to talk anything negative about him. But, for me, I was the one that was most of the time caring for the kids. I also had a full-time job, and being very lonely in a relationship, and then also being away from your family, and then living in this big, beautiful house, but still feeling completely lonely. I mean, it's just disheartening. It's really sad, and I know a lot of women feel that way. You're being lonely in a marriage and a relationship is just one of the most
worst
disheartening things. It really is. And I just remember I would literally cry myself to sleep every night thinking, I guess this is my life. because, we had kids. So I'm like, okay, I guess I just have to sacrifice my happiness for them, until one day I woke up and I'm like, I just can't do this.
I can't do it no more.
I can't do it anymore. And people always told me, you'll wake up and you'll realize and it took me like almost 2 years for me to finally be like, that's it. I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a come to Jesus moment and you wake up and I'm done with this shit. I'm just done.
Yeah. I remember that one day I was at work and I just couldn't stop sobbing the whole day. And my coworkers were just like, what's wrong? Are you kidding? I said, I don't know. I can't figure out what's wrong. But deep down inside, I knew. And that's when I was just like, I think because I knew what was going to come, and that's that same day, I'll never forget it. And I was just like, that's it. I made my choice. And we had gone to marriage counseling.
That's what my next question was going to be. So during this whole time, did marriage counseling work, or did you try?
You know what? We did it twice. The first time, a little bit. At that time, we were both wanting to make things work. We're trying to figure out where were we lacking, what was going on. We did it for about maybe 2 months or something like that. And then we kind of just forgot about it. We kind of just continued to live our lives. Nothing really changed. And then when I had told him that I was contemplating the divorce, then we went back again. And I remember that the therapist was just kind of like, you can't stay out of fear. I remember she told me that. She's like, you can't stay because you think that he's going to do something, or you think that something's going to happen. If this is how you're really feeling. And then the second time around, that's when I knew, okay, that it's just not going to work out. Because I was already kind of checked out already at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People always ask me, does marriage counseling work? And I always say 90% of the time, no, because like you just said, when usually people go when somebody has already mentally made up their mind. I want a divorce. And so the other person, let's try to get it work. Let's try. No, once somebody has made up their mind, it's more or less too late.
Yeah. It's sad. I mean, it's sad to think about it because, you go in it with the best intentions. I mean, I know I did, but the second time around reading, I mean, there was just something where I would look at him and I still can't do it, and even though he wanted to continue to make it work and he had his own reasons to want to make the marriage work, but for me, it's just, I was just checked out. I couldn't continue anymore. Yeah. Yeah. And then we just stopped it. And when the first time we went, it's not like anything really changed. We just carried on as if nothing had happened,
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I don't know if it was just content. I know for him, he was a little bit more content how the relationship was going, because, we're in a house and we're both working. We have the 2 kids. I was taking care of mostly everything with the kids, and then this and that. And he was taking care of most of the financial stuff, and he was just content the way that things were. But I wasn't. I wanted to be happy, I wanted more, Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I get the routine. Going back to your statement earlier, I remember before I made up my mind to get divorced, I remember being in bed with my ex-wife, and there's this huge body pillow between us because she didn't want to touch me, right? Or we didn't want to touch each other. We're fighting. And I remember telling my kids goodnight, tucking into bed, and I'm laying in bed and I'm looking at this beautiful house. My kids are in the other room. We have the 2 cars and everything that everybody thinks on paper they want. And they think they've made it. And this is what marriage and life and happiness is supposed to be. And I remember I'm the loneliest fucking guy here. Yeah. I can't even hug and my wife, and she doesn't understand how I'm feeling. Every time I bring it up, we get into a fight, and it's the loneliest feeling. And it's very common for a lot of people.
It is. Yeah. And it's so funny you say that, Rudy, because he would make comments like, you have like a perfect life. Everything should be perfect. Why are you feeling this way? And I remember thinking, but that's not what this is about. Just because we live in a nice big house and we have 2 cars and we're both working and this and that, that doesn't make people happy. It really doesn't. Like I moved out of the house. I downgraded to a smaller house. And guess what? I'm a lot happier because I'm alone, and our kids don't see us arguing, which to me, that's a win, But I remember, those comments. And I just remember thinking, well, shit. Should I? Am I being ungrateful? Am I being unreasonable? There were times where I'd be like, wait a minute, is it me? Like, am I the one who should be feeling differently? But I just, you just couldn't help to feel the way that I was feeling at the time, And deep down inside, I know for him, he wanted more too. You know, he wanted to be happy too. I noticed that there were things that he was doing where he was trying to kind of hide whatever pain that he was going through, you know. And I know for him, he didn't come from a big family. So I know for him kind of being away from his, you know, the small family that he has in California was hard for him too. But with him, it was just a communication. No matter how many times I tried to like talk to him and get things out of him, it was hard. And it was hard for me too, for the both of us. Our lack of communication was just bad.
It would always turn into a fight, you said.
It would always turn into a fight. Every single time I would try to bring up something, it would just always turn into a fight. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. In hindsight, what could he have done early on to save the marriage?
I mean, it sounds cliche. We could have communicated a lot better. We could have communicated a lot better about how we were feeling about, he could have been maybe a little bit more open as to what I was experiencing at the time, you know,
or maybe sympathetic.
Just a little bit more sympathetic, a little bit more compassionate about everything, you know. He was just kind of, and, you know, me too, we were just both kind of guarded with each other, you know. You know, I think that communication is something that could have really helped us. You know, I wish he would have been. And the thing that makes me sad is now that we're divorced, we're still kind of trying to figure out, because now he is open to me to move to California.
Now.
Right. And that makes me so angry, because I'm like, this is all I ever wanted. Like 3 years ago, we probably would still be married. If you could have opened up a bit his ego, you know, and I always think, oh, your ego just freaking got in the way, you know, and we probably would have been able to make things work had we been home already. And now we're, you know, but for him, he's got different reasons for me wanting to go to California. And I think I've talked to you about that, and something I don't really want to get into, but
that's fine.
So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen now. I don't know if he's probably thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe it would be a better life in California. I don't know.
I've said many times, and I know you've heard me on my live say this. One of the biggest detriments to my marriage, and it sounds like it's the same kind of a place with you and your ex-husband, is that we couldn't communicate. And I always hear people, the communication is the key to a great relationship. Yeah, it is. But I always say I never listened to her. I was always waiting to talk. I would never take in what she was saying. And it sounds like if every time you had a discussion, it sounds like it was an immediate, well, what about you? And there was no one really was listening to each other during those moments. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. You know, you shouldn't be in a position where you are trying to express how you're feeling and you get ridiculed for that.
Yes.
It's so sad. It's just, I mean, I can't even describe it. It's the most disheartening position to be in, because it's like, this is your partner who's supposed to be able to somewhat listen. And I'll never forget once we have both filed, because he actually ended up filing first.
Oh, okay.
He did. He filed first, and he had his own reasons for filing first, and then I filed. But I'll never forget that first week. It was just an off week for the both of us. And he had approached me, and because at that time I was already sleeping in a different bedroom. And he had approached me, and his emotions were all over the place, you know. And he was just like, thank you for being a good mother to my kids, you know, and was just kind of tearing up a little bit. And I appreciated that from him. And I'm like, this is all I ever wanted, was for you to open up. Why did it take for us to file for divorce for you to open up, you know? And I think that's the thing that makes me so sad about this whole thing. I'm like, guy, like, this is all I ever wanted in the beginning. And now look where we're at, you know? And if only you would have listened to me. And I remember telling him, okay, well, thank you, you know, and, you know, thank you for being such a good mom. And, you know, I could have never picked such a better mom for my kids, you know, I'm like, okay, you know, it's just, I don't know, Rudy, it's just a weird thing to explain. Like, why couldn't we do this in the beginning? Why did it have to go all the way to this point? You know,
it's a valid point. I like you said, I think I I think looking in hindsight for myself, we take people for granted in a sense.
Yeah.
We think you're married, you're not leaving. Where are you going? I mean, this is life. This is where what we're going to be. I think a lot of us get caught in that type of routine and just don't appreciate what we have in front of us until it's gone. I know that's a cliche old Cinderella song, right? But it's true. We don't appreciate what's in front of us until we realize, oh, it's not here no more. And it's heartbreaking. And I get what you're saying, because it's also, it would piss me off. Like, that's all I wanted. And now I've made up my mind. I'm moving over here now mentally. And motherfucker, where were you at earlier? Yeah. So
and then and then my divorce. I mean, it took almost 2 years. Which that's that's a whole other thing. But and during that time, we saw each other's true colors. They always say the person that you marry is not the same person you're divorcing.
True. Very true.
But now we're just co-parenting the best that we can and trying to figure stuff out, I guess, still, Yeah.
And if you don't want me to bring this up, I'll edit this out. But you said when he came back from Afghanistan, he was different. Do you think there was some maybe PTSD involved with his experience over there, and that kind of carried over and leaked into your marriage?
I think so, Rudy. Yeah. I mean, I hate to admit it. I think so. The thing with my ex is that he wasn't always, in my eyes, he wasn't always such a terrible, terrible person. I think he has experience. He's gone through a lot of stuff in his life that I never went through growing up, and then being forced out of your home when you're 18, and then having to figure out something, and then having to go to the military and having to see the things that I'm sure he saw, I think it just kind of did something to him, and then that leads to other things, addiction, not being able to communicate, shutting everybody out, and all that. And yeah. So, I mean, I kind of so I did see a little bit. It wasn't to the point where it was, oh my God, I gotta end this now. He wasn't overly just like angry, but I can tell there were some things that were a little bit irritating,
Yeah.
Did
he ever try to get counseling or help with that?
No, because at that time, I didn't really see that it was a big problem. And so that's not something that I brought up to him where I was like, you know what, I think maybe you got to see somebody. So no, we never did. Yeah. And then when we finally ended up moving to Texas after a week after we got married, it was okay. Things had calmed down. We were living in our new place. I had, was still pregnant, and it was okay, and then I don't know, just my resentment just started to get the best of me, and then I had started grad school because I'm like, okay, well, I have to do something because I wasn't working at the time after working for so long. It's like, okay, so I started grad school and then just kind of distracted myself with that, being pregnant with my oldest. Yeah.
Do you think that if, let's say, year 2, or when you got back from Germany, if he would have said, honey, I know going back to California is important to you, let's move back to California, you think if that move had taken place, you guys would still be married?
Yeah. I think we would still be married because my family did really love him, and we still cared for each other a lot at that time. We did. And, when the first time that we went to marriage counseling, I think it was about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. He had said something like, well, you don't even, at that point, he was upset at me about something. He was like, well, even if he said, you don't even want to you don't want me to go with you to California. I'm like, yes, I do. I want us to go together as a family. This was the first time that we went to marriage counseling, but he wasn't open to it. But yeah, I mean, who knows, if we probably, still be married because that's ultimately what I really wanted.
Gotcha. And how long were you married?
We were married we filed at 8 years. Mm-hmm. And then it was final right before the 10-year mark.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. 8 years is like normally when things end.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Looking back, mine should have ended about year 8 or 10. is when it should have ended. But, we hung in there and tried to make it work and such. But that seems to be like the average length.
For how many more years were you
16.
guys fine? Oh, wow. Yeah.
16.
You hung on. See, yeah, you try to hang on to it as best as you could. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of that was fear of going into the unknown. I remember there was a moment around year 10 where I went shopping for an apartment. And at the time, apartments were like $1,000 a month. I'm like, I can't afford that. And now they're ridiculous now. But I remember I honestly tried to price myself to see if I can survive and get an apartment and pay for the house at the same time. And I couldn't.
Yeah.
So I'm like, damn it. So I guess I'm stuck in this situation, but
it's that feeling of being stuck. That's, a lot of people when they're contemplating it. I mean, I have a girlfriend right now who's been going through it, and I'm like, well, you just feel stuck. You don't know what to do.
She's still married? She's still married?
Yeah. And she's still married. Yeah.
Wow.
But I think, like we talked about it, that happens a lot to a lot of these couples. You start to feel like, oh my God, the fear of, I'm going to be alone. I'm going to have to figure this out by myself, and then you have kids, that are still involved. And man, yeah, it's scary. It is.
Now that you've experienced this, and again, now that the divorce is, final and you're still doing the co-parenting, adjusting to this new normal.
Yeah.
To anybody who's listening right now, who's about to get married or maybe year 1 or year 2, let's talk about the people who are about to get married.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them to avoid this from happening in their lives? Like, what's the best advice you can give them?
I always think, to me, family is one of the most important things for me. Right. If you are with somebody who doesn't value that with you, it's not going to work. It's not. Because if you can't come to any kind of agreements because at the end of the day, I know for me, I know everybody's family is different. But I've talked to you, Rudy. I'm super close to my family. I mean, even though I'm here, I talk to at least one family member daily, whether it's my tios, my tias, my cousins, my mom, and they're the most important people in my life. If you are with somebody who doesn't value that with you, it's not going to work. It's just not going to, the red flags that we think that we're going to be able to fix, it's not going to. If you can't, if you see these in the beginning, it's not going to get any better. And I remember people used to tell me that, it's just because it's happening now, you think it's going to go away later. It's not, it's just not. And, for a lot of young couples, remember I told you I had that conversation where I've met like some young people in their 20s. So all they want to do is get married and have kids. It's like, you don't even know the responsibility. Like, all you see is, you're going to have somebody who's, I don't know. It's just, no, it's so much more than that.
Mm-hmm. What's the one thing they're not thinking about that you've experienced? They're
not thinking about when reality does hit, when you start having kids, the financial part of all that, who's going to make all those decisions, they're not thinking about when you get into arguments, like how are you prepared to even handle that? It's just things like that I think that young people just don't think about,
Yeah.
Talk about, and here's something that I think affects like a lot of couples too, the whole intimacy thing. If you can't talk openly as to what you really want when it comes to intimacy, that's really hard to keep that together. Yeah.
And intimacy, you're not talking, I mean, are you speaking like in the sexual side or just like the physical needs and emotional needs?
The physical needs. Yeah. The physical needs and all that. Yeah. I mean, if that's something that you can't really talk to your partner openly about the things that you want, then it's just really hard to come out.
Yeah.
Out of that. Yeah.
And I've been in that, I'm not in that situation now with my fiance, but we share videos, like, hey, let's do this. And let's make a movie. I'm sharing too much anyway. But the first marriage, no way. No way. I could never be, explore new things, do different things. Cause it was always met with ridicule. Like, what are you, sick? That's disgusting. I'm like, it's not a big deal, but okay. Just weird things and always shunned. But I think with my fiance now, I've learned intimacy is not just sexual, but it's more just like holding each other. Right. Like just being together.
Just being together, alone, listening holding to each other. Hands, right. Yeah. Kissing each other, holding hands, being out in public and just grabbing each other's hand, just things like that. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's a lot of things that I had, one of my aunt and my uncles, he passed about 7 years ago. But I'm telling you, Rudy, they were married for over 50 years, right?
Wow.
And my aunt, she lives in El Salvador. Every single time that we would see them, which wasn't that often, but when they would come down, they were like little lovebirds. And I mean, their kids were like my age. They're like my age now, but they were, and I remember my dad had asked my aunt at the time, how do you guys do it? Like, how is it that you guys still, because she would be like, oh, my baby. Every time she saw him, hi, baby, hi, puppy, I love you so much. I'm like, how do you do that after being married for so long? And I remember my aunt was like, we always put each other's needs first.
Yep.
Always put each other's needs. And they were always so sweet, hugging up on each other, just being really sweet with each other. And I remember looking at them like, how, Mm-hmm. But they just always managed to put each other first in every situation, and it worked out for them until he passed. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, they had a long, beautiful marriage is what it sounds like. And I've
never seen anything like that before. Never seen anything like that before. Yeah.
And I always tell people, I know every situation is different, but I always tell people one of the other detrimental things that happened in my marriage is what we became mom and dad mm-hmm. and forgot about husband and wife.
Yeah.
That you can't do that. That's a recipe for disaster. You have to put your spouse above your kids, but you know what I'm saying? You can't forget about them.
Right.
If you do, that loneliness starts to creep in, resentment kicks in, and before you know it, they connect with somebody else. That's just mm-hmm. a sad reality. I don't condone cheating, but I did it because I was lonely and things happen. Yeah. So it's just, it's simple as that. I mean, listening to each other, being mm-hmm. sympathetic to one another, and just putting their needs above all, I think is, I guess, the secret foundation to a successful marriage. But it's funny knowing that, and people hear that, but when you implement it in real life, it doesn't happen. So
it doesn't happen. I know it doesn't happen because, I mean, looking back, there are things that I wish I could have done differently too, right? I mean, it takes two to tango. I mean, it wasn't all him either. And I can admit that, there are things that I wish I could have done differently. Maybe I wasn't communicating as best as I thought. I could have gotten help for the resentment that I was feeling and the anger that I was kind of low key feeling still a little bit. I don't know if maybe he was longing something as maybe more physical touch is what he wanted. And at that time, maybe I wasn't giving it to him enough. I mean, there's things that I wish that maybe I could have done differently too.
Yeah. And resentment is very common.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear it all the time. She made me stop practicing in the band that I love. So I had to work full time. So I hear men who have resentment to their wives because they had to give up a dream. They had to give up something mm-hmm. they loved to support the family, or they mm-hmm. didn't support them in doing so. I had women said I dropped out of college or didn't pursue my career. And I have resentment to my husband for being, he wanted me to be a stay-at-home wife. So here I am 10 years later. And I hate that what if I didn't put myself out there, I don't know what I'm capable of. So it's funny how not funny, but it's common how resentment is really in a lot of relationships.
Yeah.
Because usually one person compromises more than the other or vice versa. So that's sad, but it's very common.
Yeah. We saw it with some of the couples when we were stationed in Germany. There was a couple in particular that she had flat out told her, and she's they're both one of my great friends now, but I remember at that time she had told him, if you don't get out of the military, I'm going to divorce you.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh man, that's his career. That's pretty rough, Ultimately he ended up getting out and now they're doing great. He went to law school and now they're doing great. But there was that little resentment still.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's manifested in different ways for them, but yeah, it's a relationship killer, Rudy. It is. And I can admit that,
It grows. It never goes away.
Yeah, it doesn't go away unless you really find the help to try to work through it. But it's, I was going to therapy on my own, it's mainly because of my anger. And to be honest with you, I'm still having to go through it,
of course,
because of everything that's happening, because I'm still angry about a lot of things. I love Texas. The people are amazing, but it's not my home. It will never be my home, and so I'm angry that I'm far away from my family, Now I don't see my kids every day when I want to, because now I have to co-parent with them and, trying to figure out what my next move is going to be. It's just, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with, and I'm sure for him as well,
Yeah. That new normal takes some time to
get
adjusted to it.
Yeah.
Now, just for the people who are listening, who are considering divorce, and you and I have both made that leap, and I'm 9 years out, yours is just a few months or so. What's the most difficult thing adjusting to once a divorce happens? What's the most difficult thing that you had to adjust to?
So for me was my anxiety, because I felt like when we were going through the whole process, I was in fight or flight mode. I didn't know what was going to happen day to day because we were still living together while we were still going through everything. That's tough in itself, right? Because none of us wanted to leave the house, So that when I finally moved out of the house, man, I remember having that anxiety for like a month straight. And even though like I was alone, that, man, they don't tell you how rough that is. That anxiety for me just would not go away. It's a lot better now, because
it gets easier.
It gets easier. But yeah, it's that fear of being alone, that anxiety that you still think, oh my God, what if something's going to happen still? You just feel like you can't still fully live like the life that you want,
Yeah.
I think that's rough. And I remember like some of my family members, they'd be like, oh, you should be so happy, oh my God, this and that. You're finally out. You're on your own. I'm like, yeah, but it's still hard. You still deal with the emotions of it. I mean, this is somebody that you're with in a family for so long.
Yeah.
And even though it was good or bad, you were still doing things as a family together. And to now just be alone, it's a huge transition. That's tough. And it's not because you're in love with that person. That's not what it is. It's because you were together as a family at some point. You still had good times. I mean, we still had good times together. And sometimes I'll think about the good times that we had together, and it does make me sad. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It does make me sad, but just trying to move forward. I mean, that's a tough part. It does take a while because I mean, I'm 3, 4, maybe 4 or 5 months in, and I'm still adjusting to everything.
Yeah. I remember it took me about maybe 8 months, really. I knew every month that went by, each month was better.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact. I don't know how long it took, but about 8 months, but I remember keeping myself occupied because for me, the most difficult thing for me, and I'm sure it was for you, was dropping off the kids. And now you come home and the house is quiet.
Yeah.
It's like nobody running. There's no TVs in the other room. They're not arguing. You don't hear nothing. Right. It's just you. And that silence is deafening.
Yeah.
It drove me crazy. So I remember just learning new skills. I would volunteer my time at elderly retirement homes or Comic-Cons.
Yeah.
I couldn't be alone. I couldn't be alone. So I go, and I had no money. So I was like, okay,
right.
Let me volunteer my time. Let me go do something. So I did a lot of things just to keep me busy and occupied. And that helped in a sense, but that was really hard for me. But you get through it before you know it. It's the new normal happens. And then dropping off the kids at my ex-wife's, apartment and saying bye to them, seeing them walk away. I was like, fuck, I'd be crying in the car. I'd be breaking down, but you get used to it.
Yeah. When the kids aren't here, because, they're not with me every other weekend, but when they're not here, I close their bedroom door because I don't want to walk past, I don't want to walk past and see their rooms, okay. So I close their bedroom doors, and then, we have a dog, and I know when she feels them when they're not here. So she'll creep around the house looking for them. I'm like, baby, they're not here, so that makes me sad, I
forgot about that too. My dog would just stand in front of the door, like look at me like, open it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, they're not here. I hear her little footsteps all around the house, Luckily so far, pickup and drop off has been good. No complaints in that, but, it is hard, that silence in the house. I enjoy it sometimes, just being by myself, because I don't get it often,
Yeah.
I don't get it
you're
often.
right. There is some peace in that, in a sense,
There
like,
is some
wow.
peace. Yeah. But then
there's
there's times where I'm like, maybe I need to get out. Maybe I should. You talked about it. When you asked me, what are you doing? I was like, no, I'm just hanging out at the house, but yeah.
Yeah. From experience, and I know your experience in itself, holidays always suck. I hated holidays. That's why I didn't celebrate Christmas for a good 6-7 years.
Oh man.
I didn't put up decorations. I didn't put up the tree. I just didn't want to see the tree because seeing the tree and the doors closed, like you said, it was
Yeah.
heartbreaking for me. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. 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 It's hard. Yeah, I don't know how the holidays are going to look like this year for us. I remember, I know last Christmas we were still in the house, so we kept it as cordial as we could for the best for the girls, but yeah, I don't know how it's going to be like this coming up. So that's going to be a whole new experience for me. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, you're doing great. And a couple more questions. Are you finding, for me, I found that, once the divorce happened and we adjusted to the new normal, I found that the ex-wife and I were better parents than we were husband and wife. Are you starting to see that with your ex-husband? Are you starting to see more peace between you and this arrangement being maybe better?
I think so. Yeah. I don't really know exactly how he does when he's with the girls because the kids don't really tell me anything and nor do I ask, because I just don't want, I always tell them, you enjoy your time with your dad. Mommy's going to be fine, For me, I think it has brought because I am a little bit more peaceful with just being by myself, that it has taught me to be a little bit more patient with the kids. I'm not constantly on edge. When you're on edge, that's when, you start any little thing that they do just irritates the crap out of you,
Yeah.
But I've noticed since I'm not as edge as much as I was, when we're in another situation. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's doing a lot better because I can see that the kids have adjusted. They're doing pretty well.
That's good.
When I can see that when
they're following your example, you and him are doing a great job. Then if they're adjusting well, that means you and him are doing great.
I like to think that, really, honestly. I always, we might have our own issues. Obviously, that's where it was landed, where we're at while we got divorced. But as far as with the kids, I can't really complain because he hasn't really, it's not like he's horrible to them or anything like that. So I can't complain with that. That's why I tell him, you enjoy your time with your dad. You guys have fun. Did you have fun? This and that. I do my best, obviously, not to. Here's one thing. I remember I did roll my eyes one time and my oldest hated it. She was like, don't do that. You're rolling your eyes at daddy. I'm like, no, baby. I said, that's just, because I'm still learning, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't think about that, just me just going, and she caught it.
They're always watching.
They're always watching,
always listening to what you say.
Oh my gosh. And I remember she straight called me out on it. I was like, okay, baby, I'm sorry. I'm like, you know what? Mommy doesn't have a poker face sometimes. And it wasn't anything, I tried so much to minimize it. I'm like, okay, you gotta be careful.
Good for her.
She called me out. Yeah. And you know what? I told them, I said, if there's anything that mommy does that you don't like, please tell me, so she straight called me out on it. She has no problem.
That's good. Good for her. Good for her. And I'm glad you took it in a constructive way. I'm glad you didn't say, well, your dad is an asshole. I'm glad you didn't continue with that. No. Because you don't want to do that. No.
Exactly. And I don't know what he does in his house, but so far it seems to be okay because when they come back, they don't say anything negative or act towards a negative way. So far, we'll see. We're still kind of new in this whole thing. So hopefully it stays that way.
And in a weird way, I know people don't think about this because if they're married or, haven't been in the situation you and I are in an odd way, the kids connect closer to the other parent. Let's say dad worked all the time or whatever the case is, and they spent more time with the mom. Now dad has them and he gets to spend hours with them. It's just them now. So it strengthens the relationship in the way. And I love the fact that it sounds like you two aren't disrespecting each other or talking ill about one another toward the kids. That's what you don't want to do.
Right.
So that's a good thing. For me, let me ask you this, if you're feeling the same thing, because I was so involved with my kids' lives and I still am. But I remember when they were with their mom, that new normal started, and I would go on a road trip with some girl I met. I remember leaving San Antonio, and I feel guilty. I've never left town without my kids, and now we're doing something fun. We're doing sightseeing, and my kids aren't with me taking pictures. I feel guilty going out and do things. Are you feeling the same thing?
Well, you know what, Ray? I couldn't answer you that because I haven't gone anywhere.
Okay. Well, when it happens, let me know.
I haven't gone anywhere. I mean, I went to California with them. I took them with me. I don't know if that's something that maybe he might be feeling because when we used to go to California, we all used to stay together at my parents' house as a family. And I know for him, that's been a struggle for him. But for me, I haven't experienced that because I haven't really gone anywhere. Now, I've gone to dinner with one of my friends that lives down the street or whatever. And maybe a little bit, just being out by myself, without them, because they're always with me. Honestly, really, they were always with me,
Yeah. Yeah. Same
And
with me.
so, yeah, they're just always with me. And so, yeah, the times that I've gone out to dinner or just super casual, whatever, but no.
I went to
If
Austin.
it gets to that point, I'll let you know.
Okay. I went to Austin. I'm bringing up the story real quick. I went to Austin with this nurse I was dating, and she goes, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Oh, this is just like one of my first times going out without my kids, and I always wanted them, so I feel a little guilty." She had already been married and divorced as well, and her kids were like my kids' age. And she goes, "Rudy, you got to let that shit go." And I'm like, "What?" She goes, "You're a wonderful dad. You've been through a lot. You owe it to yourself to have a good time. So, let's have fun tonight. I'm going to make sure you have fun." And I'm like, "Thank you."
That's nice, right? Because not a lot of people will tell you that and be straightforward with you like that,
Yeah. And she was.
And you have to hear it. You have to hear it. I have one of my girlfriends, too, that tries to put me on check, too. Like, come on, man. Like, you're not doing anything wrong. Just go out, go do something, do something for yourself. The whole self-care, this and that. But you still feel guilty, you know.
And since I was the one who filed, I remember feeling incredibly guilty. Like, man, I did this. I broke up my family. And for years, I was overcompensating with the kids. I was buying them more gifts, and I was not as disciplined with them like I was when we were married. I let them get away with more things than I should have.
Yeah.
And I remember my fiance telling me that, you let them walk all over you sometimes. I'm like, yeah, it stems from the guilt of me.
Yeah.
Breaking up the family, filing for divorce. And that's something that people don't talk about is that guilt. And, we try to overcompensate with gifts, trips, toys, and attention. And you need me to pick you up here? Okay. It's, whatever. You're like an Uber now. So,
I've been guilty of that. Yeah. I mean, there's times where, my kid would be like, "Oh, I want boba at 7:00 at night." Okay, baby, we can go,
exactly. And
I know he does the same thing too, because sometimes when they come back, they'll come back with, some little cutesy stuff or whatever, know. But yeah, I mean, I think that's perfectly normal to feel that way, because you're just like, oh man, you want them so bad to be happy. But deep down inside that material things is not going to make them happy. But if you get like that little glimpse of happiness in them, you kind of feel like you're doing something okay. I don't know if that's, and just seeing their little face light up. Okay, I guess you can have ice cream at 10:00 at night. Sure,
Sure.
Like,
yeah, that would have been no when the married life, but like now, okay, whatever you want. Sure. You want Starbucks? Okay, sure. Let's get you some Starbucks.
Sure. You want a chai tea? All right, I guess we can go. I know.
Yeah. Florida, this is a wonderful conversation, and I have to applaud you sincerely. I respect the hell out of you for being vulnerable and sharing the story, because like I said, I'm comfortable 8 years after the fact, and and I can take the criticisms and all that on social media, but you just 6 months out, that's still fresh. It's still a fresh wound. And I love the hell out of you for like sharing the story and being vulnerable here.
Thank you.
I respect the hell out of you, and thank you for doing this.
I appreciate it. Rudy, I am really, really proud of everything that you are doing right now. I mean, you're engaged, you have a baby, your podcast, everything. You really are helping so many people. I mean, that's one of the reasons that attracted me to you was all the advice that you were giving, so vice versa, amigo. I'm super proud of you too. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for watching. If you haven't done so already, please follow the show on whatever platform you're listening on. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, like the video, and also leave some comments. Let me know if you thought the information in this video was helpful in any way. Also, keep in mind I have an entire catalog of other episodes regarding cheating, life after divorce, dating after divorce, how to survive a breakup, all listed there for your help. So please watch and let me know what your thoughts are. Thanks for watching Root Advice. Take care out there.